Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this first session. My name is Martin Smith. I'm the head of marketing for Neolane. So welcome and good morning to you all. Some happy faces there. Normally what I do when there's a reasonable crowd, I do a little sort of social experiment to get everybody warmed up and kicked off for the day. I'm going to give it a go anyhow. So what I'd like you to do, if you could, is actually all stand up for a few minutes, and we're going to do sort of a little exercise, really. Now, I don't know if any of you've sort of seen the sort of Japanese factories in the morning when they all kick off, and before they start working, they do star jumps and all these sort of things to keep warmed up. I'm not going to ask you to do that. But what I want you to do is I want you to shake your hands at the side, and when I say go, I want you to clap your hands together and then hold them clasped, if you can. So ready, go. Right, hold them clasped. Right, little social experiment here. So if you look at your hands, even look at the people who are standing next to you or whatever, look at how their thumbs are. So if their left thumb is over their right thumb, all their thought processes are actually driven by logic. If it's the other way around, in other words, the right over the left, all their thought processes are actually driven by sex. All right, thanks. It's just a little experiment you can try. Get you warmed up in the morning. So this morning's session is on SoLoMo, and I hate to say the word SoLoMo because it seems to be another one of these sort of acronyms that we seem to use on a daily basis with the conversations that we have at our offices and our workplaces and what have you. And I always think, when I'm having a conversation on the phone at home, for example, with a colleague, and my wife's listening, she has no idea what I'm talking about because it seems to be a complete set of acronyms. So I apologise. I'm actually now going to add another one of those acronyms to it, which is SoLoMo, or the convergence of what we call social, local, and mobile. It did actually remind me of quite a famous movie. I must go back, and it shows my age now. This is a particular movie, was Good Morning Vietnam, with Robin Williams. And there's a particular scene out of that movie where he basically speaks this whole scene in acronyms, which is something like this.
How the VP is such a VIP. Shouldn't we keep the PC on the QT? Because if it leaks to the VC, you can end up in MIA, and then we'd all be put on KP.
So again, apologies for that. I don't know if anybody did you hear that? So it went through, he says, if the VP, Vice President, is a VIP, very important person, shouldn't we be on the QT, on the quiet? In case the VC, the Viet Cong, MIA, missing in action. And the one that people don't know is at the end where he says, otherwise we'll be put on KP. Now, being an ex-military person myself, KP was kitchen patrol, and that's where basically we ended up doing the potatoes, or literally guarding the kitchen itself, the barracks. But what I thought to do is actually, it's not another buzzword, another acronym. It's actually happening now in terms of this whole convergence. And I'm sure all of you have either a smartphone or a tablet that you're actually beginning to use at work, that you pretty much use when you're on the train to look at your emails on the way to office or whatever it might be. And we've seen a huge growth in the use of those devices. And what's interesting is marketeers are still sort of struggling to understand how they can actually market to the people when they're actually on that phone. And hopefully during this presentation I'll pick up some areas that we've seen with a lot of our clients that we're dealing with. I'm also going to give you some ideas of some use cases as well, some of the things around the technology, and look through a particular case study of a client that we've been working in France with to get that. So there's some interesting statistics. There is on our stand, which is at C5, which is right at the front of the right by the doors, in fact. We do have some white papers and some infographics, so if you'd like to pop along, pick something on the white paper, on the infographic would be more than welcome. Anybody seen this particular diagram before? Probably doesn't show very well on this. But in fact, this is a representation of all the friendships in Facebook and how they're all interconnected with each other throughout the whole of the world. Sorry, I think Asia and Australia are missing off that particular picture there. But what's interesting is that we're actually now seeing, and you can see the figures from the likes of Facebook where they're saying there's now over 1 billion users of Facebook around the world. And what's interesting is that the access to something like Facebook, and nearly half of that billion is actually accessing their Facebook through a mobile device. So again, what we're seeing people using their smartphones to get through to social media and what have you. So it's becoming a very important part of a marketeer's thought process: is how do I access people when they're actually on, and how do I make messaging, and how do I do promotions to people when they're actually using their smartphone device or their tablet. Another interesting stat, this actually came from eBay itself, and eBay were actually saying that they're actually now getting one out of every 3 cars sold in the UK is actually now completed actually on a mobile device. So they might start the process, for example, on a laptop or on their desktop at home or whatever it might be, but they're actually using the eBay app, for example, to actually complete the purchase itself. And in fact, last year they actually said that what they're looking to do is actually generate around about $8 billion worth of transactions through eBay using the mobile device itself. So you can see the importance for someone like eBay to make sure that they have good coverage, not just on the standard desktop environments, but also in laptop, and in mobiles and in tablet computing as well. So that's all well and good, and I think sometimes from a marketeer's perspective, having this additional channel to push people to is all well and good, but I think you still need to sort of carry out some of the traditional methods of marketing to that, and that's being able to understand, one, who your clients are. So, we talk about being able to actually segment and target the people from a social perspective more effectively. So here's something that we've used in the past. This is actually from Forrester. And this is basically what they call their ladder. And it allows us, in terms of marketeers, to actually look at where in the ladder our customers are and be able to segment them more effectively, so that when we're actually doing any marketing or promotion to them, we can actually understand who they are and the interaction that they have with the company itself. So as you can see here, we have a range of everything from sort of inactives, such as people who just don't use any of the functionality on their mobile phone or tablet, right up to sort of the creators who are doing a lot of activity, publishing blogs, writing feedback on sites and that kind of thing. And, I urge you, when you're looking through any campaigns that you're doing, is actually understand where your clients fit in that particular ladder, understand how you're going to target those people with relevant content to them. And the same goes, obviously, when you look at the mobile side. So that was obviously focusing on the social side. When we look at mobile, there's the same sort of ladder, if you will, and just some interesting stats here, especially with specifically for the UK marketplace. But this is how it sort of breaks down in terms of the usage. So again, everybody there's a very small percentage now who don't own a mobile phone. But interesting areas are things like communicators who are just using literally the thing to send an SMS, be able to make phone calls. Hey, it was a phone originally, so that's what they're doing. But interestingly, the 2 top areas, like the super connected and entertainers, are now beginning to use those mobile phones for a lot more, and tablets for a lot more content. And again, when you're thinking about the campaigns that you're going to run to these individuals with these different devices, I think it's very important to understand where your customers fit in that and be able to make sure that you're providing communications and content which is highly relevant to the sector that you're targeting. Now, there's a lot of stats about mobile phone growth and tablet growth, and there's all the Gartners and the Forresters of this world who come up with regular reports. There's a few there that this has come from a Forrester report recently, and what we've seen, especially in the UK, if I look at the UK specifically, they're now talking about 60% of the mobile phones out in the marketplace are now smartphones. So they're either the iOS devices through Apple, or they're the Android devices through HTC or through Samsung. So there's a lot of growth in this particular market. And as you can also see, that there is a growth in the tablet side as well. So we've seen obviously the increase in sales of the likes of the Apple iPad and the Galaxy Tabs and these kind of devices now from that. And I think there's a nickname being used around for those kind of devices, or people using those devices, as the lazy internet. In other words, I really cannot be bothered to get up off the seat. If I'm watching something on TV, I just pick up my iPad and perhaps, be able to sort of surf or whatever I want to do on that. So, again, an interesting stat that shows even more growth in the areas of this sort of mobile technology. Another thing that's come up recently also, and it was actually quite an interesting piece on BBC News this morning. There is a mobile show happening currently in Barcelona, I believe, and there was a piece about how these devices are moving forward in terms of the functionality and the data that they're beginning to collect. Now, we could get into a discussion about what we term big data. So if you can imagine the sort of data that you have about a client, and now you're getting data from all these different things like social activity, so every tweet, blog, Facebook post, or whatever that might be, you're collecting data from the customer about what they're doing. If you can imagine that now expanding even further, and especially within mobile devices, when you start looking at some of the technology that's being deployed. So even things like sensors that are in the areas of accelerometers, which is a standard sort of feature now on most of the phones to be able to see, whether you're in landscape or portrait. But more importantly, it's things like gyroscopes, it's things like even chemical sensors. So if you can imagine that you now are collecting all of this data from a particular individual using their phone, how could you as a marketeer start using that data to effectively create offers, messaging, content that's highly relevant to them at the point of time, in that particular point of time. So now we're talking about not just static information that you have about the client, but real-time contextual information that you need to be looking at and being able to understand and seeing how you could use that in sort of future campaigns that you as you move forward. The other area there, of course, are things like near-field communications, which is taking off. So, we've probably got now the old bank cards that you can just swipe over a terminal now up to a transaction of £10, for example. Now we're seeing a lot of these things within phones. I know Apple hasn't gone there, but the likes of Samsung have now got the capability of near-field communications within that and being able to use that. And again, being able to collect more and more data from those things from a marketeer's perspective to understand where that person is in real time as well and be able to push real-time messages and content to that individual. So again, I urge you to think about with your customer base, understanding what kind of interaction that you're going to have, how you're going to manage that sort of huge amount of data that's now going to come into you as an organization, and how as a marketeer you're actually going to be able to get through that data and understand what pieces of that information I need to do, the marketing I need to do to drive sales or revenue or conversion rates from that. The other area, of course, is we talk about it's the low in the SoLoMo, it's the location aspect. And I think this is becoming more and more relevant. And I'm sure this morning, for example, I saw on a train on the way up a sign which had not only near-field communications, but it had a QR code, had the ability to text. And it basically, if you can imagine all that information that's then available to that company to understand where you are in real time and be able then to send specific offers and communications to that individual. And what we're seeing a lot more of those things like the social check-in. So Foursquare is a good example, but obviously Facebook has that capability that you can check in socially there and then. Now, that's quite useful as a marketer to understand where that person is in real time so that, for example, you might be able to say, well, actually, a store is, 20 meters away from you or, a mile away from you or whatever. Why don't you come and visit our store and we'll give you an extra 10% discount or something like that. So using that real-time location information to be able then to actually display right kind of content and messaging to that. And of course you could use that for things like alerts. If you can imagine a train company or something like that, you're just a few meters away from the train station, you can say actually your train's delayed. So you can start thinking about it not just from a marketing communications perspective, but also from an operational and transactional messaging as well. We looked at a retail example recently with one of our clients, and we were sort of brainstorming the kind of things that they could actually do using the whole social, local, and mobile. And what was quite interesting, we got into a discussion around about what we call geofencing, or the ability literally in each aisle within the shop itself to actually pinpoint an individual where they are on the aisle and then think about how they could actually start sending specific messages to that individual when they're in the aisle. So, we looked at things like, obviously things like barcode scanning. So you scan a barcode with your smartphone, be able to pull up the right information about that particular product. Perhaps even in-store navigation, and a whole list of sort of capabilities using those mobile devices. This was quite an interesting one here, was the competitor store. So being able to actually detect if one of your customers is actually at one of your competitor stores, and perhaps even think about putting promotions out there saying, well, actually, if you shop at us, which we're only 100 yards down the road, we'll give you a better deal on the product that you're looking at. So, and it got quite an interesting conversation of that. And obviously things of how you would use then the tablets at home to do things like, in-store video, sort of how-to videos and stuff like that to support basically that more of a customer service beyond the interaction that you've had with them on the basis of being in the store itself. And, looking at things like this geofencing or indoor GPS is a quite an interesting concept, is being able to say, where is that individual in the store itself, and being able to then present an offer, a promotion, whatever, within the store, have slightly different offers if they're in different stores. So again, that's all about using the information that you're getting back from that particular customer from that device. As I can say, the challenge as marketeers becomes now we've got such a broad range of data that we need to look at and be able to sort of mine and understand so that we can make sure that we're promoting the right offers to the right people at the right time. And sort of brings me on to what we call contextual relevance, and it's that balance. Now, during that conversation, there's a lot of data flying around, there's a lot of offers that we could put out there. The question is, culturally, are we going to accept that? Are we going to every time walk down an aisle in a retail store or whatever, except that we're going to be pushed a message or an offer and everything, and suddenly it goes completely nuts. We're literally on our phones constantly trying to get rid of half of this stuff. So again, I think as a marketer, you've got to get that balance. You've got to get the balance of the traditional information that you have about the client, as well as this contextual information that's fed to you, and make sure that you're not creating what I term marketing fatigue. So in other words, you're not over-marketing to an individual every opportunity that you have. So it's important to get that balance between offline and online in terms of the data that you're using for contextual relevance.
Neolane provides the only conversational marketing technology that empowers organizations to build one-to-one, cross-channel dialogues, increasing revenue and marketing efficiency. Popularized by smartphones and tablets, mobile apps have gained rapid adoption among mainstream consumers. Consumers wish to review special offers, solicit particular services, or make purchases via the app. Users no longer consider an app as a simple interface to find information. They use the app as a fun, interactive, and intuitive way of engaging. The app is a unique channel and immediate means of communication and promotion to consumers that are connected 24/7. To capitalize on these opportunities, Neolane Mobile App Channel integrates the app among other channels and allows marketers to leverage push notifications and manage one-to-one personalized app content. Let's look at the solution in action. Paul Abbey has downloaded the NeoShop app. He remains an anonymous user. As such, he receives a generic push notification to win 15 loyalty points. To take advantage of this offer, he must answer a question about product preferences. Paul declares an interest for cameras and enters his email. Now that Paul is an identified user, Neolane reconciles his email address with an existing and known profile in the marketing database. His mobile device information and geolocation have been captured. His stated preference for cameras is also recorded. Highly personalized offers can now be sent to Paul. Marketers can design and execute a cross-channel workflow to target all users who recently declared their interest for cameras. The campaign can be run against email, direct mail, SMS and Facebook, as well as iOS and Android apps. Once the campaign executed, Paul receives a notification that is one-to-one personalized based on his camera preference and loyalty status. Paul didn't act on this opportunity. 2 days later, he strolls close to a NeoShop store. He receives a notification inviting him to use a coupon on a camera in store. Based on Neolane's dynamic geolocation capabilities, the message is real-time, geospecific, and personalized using customer information stored in the database. Neolane provides mobile analytics to quickly measure the impact of sent and open notifications, as well as additional sales. For geolocated campaigns, reports can compare store profits and conversion rates. For more information, visit neolane.com.
So just a little video, and apologies for the sales pitch amongst that. what I wanted to show you there's just a very simple use case of how you could use apps now as part of the process. So we've been talking about obviously communicating on things like email and that kind of thing. What we're seeing is a rise in the use of apps now. People are downloading apps. And there's always a discussion of whether you should go for a sort of a mobile optimized website or whether you should go for a developed app for the brand itself. And the sort of experience that we've come across with a lot of our clients is there is a sort of compelling reason why someone would download the app and obviously maintain it on their phone. And loyalty is a good example of that, where you can see your loyalty points and these kind of things. And what we found, especially with that, is that the app channel and using the push notifications has become now quite prevalent in terms of communicating with clients. One, it's free. Unlike all the other channels like email and stuff like that, has a certain cost to it. You get into mobile apps, it's actually effectively a free service through the iOS and Android environments. But it also is quite relevant in terms of things like take-up. So we've seen interesting stats around comparing it with email, where we've seen the take-up being quite low in terms of subscription to the email campaigns in comparison to with push notifications. And we've seen with push notifications around about a 70% subscription to those actual push notifications on the apps that we've been working with our clients. So these are people who are saying, yeah, actually send me those push notifications, send me that information itself. But again, I urge you, if you go down that particular channel, not to overdo it and end up with marketing fatigue, and especially with apps where people go, well, I'm bored with that, I'll just delete it off my phone itself. So I wanted to sort of take you through a particular case study of a client that we worked up in France. This is BMW. So this is actually quite a sort of true cross-channel environment that we work with them. So they had their website, they had their email campaigns that they were sending out, and they were trying to do a lot more personalization in terms of the content that was going out, both on the web and on the email itself. So what we saw was, especially with the sort of content of the email, that we were able to start personalizing that content based on certain things that have been declared by that particular individual to BMW. So it might be, particular models that they're interested in and what have you. And that was all well and good, but what we want to do is actually take that experience that next step further with the BMW clients, and that was to actually say, well, why don't we have this available on the mobile itself as well? So they created a mobile app, and here we have the access to that, and you can download that app. And then what they were able to do is literally then start using, for example, push notifications to actually personalize the experience within the app itself. So it wasn't just a standard sort of push notification. It had personalization areas that they could put in there, like name. In this particular case, this individual, Bonin, was interested in the sort of new Series 1 Coupe. And they were able basically to take that and actually start customizing the message itself. But more importantly, what we were able to see is then further uses of this information within the app itself. So they were able to use our interaction module, which is offer management, which is highly personalized. So we can take any information about the client that we have within there then actually use that to start personalizing the actual content within the app itself. Taking that stage further, we said, well, now we have all the geolocation information like longitude and latitude. We can actually say, well, what's the nearest proximity to a service garage or to a particular dealer that might want to do a test drive. So they were started thinking about how they could use that real-time information in terms of location then to, again, personalize the experience within the app itself. So that's just a sort of example. And the interesting thing with this example was that they had a challenge of it wasn't BMW directly to the end consumer. They had to go obviously through the dealer as well. So they had to do literally a B to B to C type campaign through that and involve the dealer in that process as well. And as you can see, the dealer had the ability to actually implement their information within the app itself, that if a customer was nearby that particular dealer, that then it would come up. So that's an example that we did with BMW. More recently, we've been working with a few retail clients, especially online, where they've been using the mobile push application to actually then be able to customize the information that they're sending. So if you purchase something, they could actually incorporate that in a push notification rather than an email. And they found, again, as I mentioned, the sort of take-up of that method of communication more effective than a traditional email. So just a few takeaways there. Again, apologies for another buzzword to add to your day, i.e. SoLoMo. But it is really happening. You know, what we are seeing is that growth of mobile. We're seeing the ability for people to actually access the information within there. The future really is about what we call this contextual relevance as well, being able to understand where someone is in real time, making sure that you can actually then put promotions and offers to those individuals in real time where they are in their life. And sort of really consider the people that you're trying to reach. Think about the segmentation, the targeting, and more importantly, don't get trapped in the marketing fatigue aspect of this. Don't over-market using those new particular channels.